On October 27, 1962, during a tense moment in history, a Soviet submarine captain ordered a nuclear torpedo to be launched at a U.S. aircraft carrier. The world narrowly avoided catastrophe thanks to Vasili Arkhipov, the submarine's second-in-command, who refused to authorize the attack. His crucial decision prevented a potential nuclear war and spared the world from the devastating consequences of World War III. Join us as we explore the events that almost led to global disaster. Before diving into the specifics of the submarine that almost triggered another global conflict, it's essential to understand the evolution of submarines. Early use of submarines. These underwater vessels have a deep-rooted history, dating back to ancient times when divers used primitive submerged vehicles for exploration, research, and eventually, warfare. Early attempts, like those of Alexander the Great, were rudimentary, but advancements in propulsion, fuel technology, and sonar eventually revolutionized submarine capabilities. Submarine warfare saw significant growth with the introduction of the diesel engine and nuclear-powered submarines, particularly during World Wars I and II and the Cold War. The impact of submarines on history was solidified by the Kriegsmarine's use of U-boats against the Royal Navy and commercial vessels in World War II, as well as the strategic deployments of submarines by the United States and Russia during the Cold War. Submarines, while originally designed for warfare, have evolved to serve significant roles in both recreational and scientific endeavors. They are vital tools for exploring the ocean's depths, reaching areas far beyond the capabilities of traditional scuba diving. Submarines are also extensively used in search and rescue missions, aiding in the recovery of lost submarines, surface ships, and even aircraft. Their ability to navigate the ocean floor has made them indispensable for deep-sea exploration and has captured the imagination of many, becoming central themes in popular culture, including books and films. Throughout history, submarines have played crucial roles in several major conflicts, including the American Civil War, which happened from 1861 to 1865, the First Balkan War, which happened from 1912 to 1913, World War I, which happened from 1914 to 1918, and World War II, which happened from 1939 to 1945. Their strategic importance in these wars helped shape their development and cemented their place in both military history and popular consciousness. World War II's impact on submarine development and strategy. World War II significantly shaped submarine development and strategy, influencing the Soviet B59, which nearly triggered World War III during the Cuban Missile Crisis. During World War II, submarines emerged as a critical component of naval strategy, with German U-boats playing a key role in the Battle of the Atlantic by severely disrupting Allied shipping. The intense submarine warfare of this era drove substantial advancements in submarine design and technology, with lessons from these conflicts shaping the future of underwater combat. By the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, submarines like the Soviet B-59 had incorporated these innovations, offering enhanced underwater endurance, more advanced weaponry, and greater stealth capabilities. The B-59, a Foxtrot-class submarine developed during the Cold War, was directly influenced by the technological leaps made during World War II. World War II concluded with the use of nuclear weapons, introducing a new and devastating factor into global military strategy. The advent of nuclear arms fundamentally transformed the nature of warfare, leading to the creation of nuclear-armed submarines during the Cold War. The B-59 was equipped with a nuclear torpedo, a product of the post-World War II arms race and the strategy of deterrence. This evolution elevated submarines from merely tactical assets to strategic weapons, with the power to influence global outcomes. The Cold War era's strategy of mutually assured destruction, MAD, was deeply rooted in the experiences of World War II and the subsequent proliferation of nuclear weapons. Submarines like the B-59 were central to this doctrine, serving as a vital second strike capability. This meant that even if a nation's land-based nuclear arsenal was destroyed in a first strike, its submarines could still launch a retaliatory attack, thereby deterring potential aggressors from initiating a nuclear conflict. World War II showcased the power of submarine warfare, prompting the development of more refined tactics and strategies in the years that followed. Both the United States and the Soviet Union recognized that submarines were not only essential for conventional naval battles, but also as key platforms for launching nuclear strikes. These strategies were put to the test during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where submarines played a crucial role in the standoff between the two superpowers. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world perilously close to nuclear war, and at the center of this confrontation was the Soviet submarine B59. As the crisis unfolded, the U.S. Navy detected the B59 near Cuba and began using practice depth charges to compel it to surface, unaware that the submarine was armed with a nuclear torpedo. But to understand the full gravity of this situation, it's important to look at the events that led to the Cuban Missile Crisis itself, a major Cold War showdown between the United States and the Soviet Union. The roots of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The roots of the crisis trace back to 1959 when Fidel Castro led a revolution that ousted Cuban dictator Fulgencio Batista. Castro quickly established a communist government and aligned with the Soviet Union, causing alarm in the United States, which had significant economic ties to Cuba and feared the spread of communism so close to its borders. In a bid to overthrow Castro, the U.S. supported the ill-fated Bay of Pigs invasion in April 1961, where Cuban exiles attempted to reclaim the island. The invasion failed disastrously, strengthening Castro's ties with the Soviet Union, which he now relied on for protection against future American attacks. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity to increase Soviet influence in the Western Hemisphere by placing nuclear missiles in Cuba. This move would serve a dual purpose. It would shield Cuba from another U.S. invasion and counterbalance the presence of U.S. missiles stationed in Turkey and Italy, which were within striking range of the Soviet Union. In the summer of 1962, the Soviet Union began secretly delivering nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles to Cuba, escalating tensions in the already strained Cold War. By October of that year, U.S. reconnaissance aircraft had detected these missile installations under construction. Concerned about the imminent threat posed by these weapons, situated just 90 miles from the American mainland, President John F. Kennedy demanded their immediate removal. On October 22, 1962, Kennedy publicly revealed the presence of the missiles and announced a naval blockade termed a quarantine around Cuba to prevent further Soviet military deliveries. He also issued a stern warning that any attack originating from Cuba would trigger a full retaliatory strike against the Soviet Union. For 13 days, as diplomatic negotiations between the United States and the Soviet Union intensified, the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. The Soviets proposed a deal. They would remove their missiles from Cuba in exchange for the U.S. dismantling its missile installations in Turkey. The crisis peaked when an American U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba, further escalating the tension. Finally, on October 28, 1962, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev agreed to withdraw the missiles from Cuba in exchange for a U.S. promise not to invade the island. Additionally, the United States secretly agreed to remove its missiles from Turkey at a later date. The resolution of the crisis marked a pivotal moment in the Cold War, leading to a slight easing of hostilities between the two superpowers. A direct communication line, famously known as the Hotline, was established between Washington and Moscow to prevent such close calls in the future. The B59 Submarine, a Cold War flashpoint. During this period, the Soviet submarine B59 played a significant role. Measuring about 300 feet in length, the B59 was among the most advanced non-nuclear submarines of its time, designed for anti-surface and anti-submarine warfare. It was powered by diesel engines for surface cruising and electric motors for underwater operations, enabling it to maneuver stealthily beneath the ocean's surface. The B-59 was equipped with a formidable arsenal, including a nuclear-armed torpedo, capable of unleashing a blast equivalent to several kilotons of TNT. This powerful weapon had the capacity to inflict catastrophic damage, making the B-59 a critical strategic asset during the Cold War. In October 1962, as the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the brink of nuclear conflict, the crew of the B-59 found themselves at the heart of this intense standoff. The submarine was part of a Soviet flotilla dispatched to the Caribbean, where tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union had escalated to a perilous level due to the deployment of nuclear missiles in Cuba. As the crisis unfolded, The B-59's mission placed it at the center of a potential flashpoint that could have ignited a global nuclear war. The crew, isolated deep beneath the ocean's surface, faced immense pressure as they navigated the delicate and dangerous situation. The key figures in the B-59 Submarine. The first key figure among the B-59 crew was its commanding officer, Captain Valentin Grigorievich Savitsky, who bore the heavy responsibility of managing the submarine under extraordinarily tense conditions. Despite his extensive experience as a naval officer, Savitsky and his crew found themselves in an unprecedented situation. When U.S. Navy forces detected the B-59, they began dropping depth charges as a form of warning, intending to force the submarine to surface. However, the overwhelming noise and impact of the depth charges, coupled with the uncertainty of whether war had already begun, led Savitsky to believe that his submarine was under attack. Adding to the gravity of the situation was the presence of Ivan Semyonovich Maslenikov, the submarine's political officer. Maslenikov held a position of authority that was on par with that of the captain, particularly in critical decisions, such as the possible launch of the B-59's nuclear torpedo. His role was to ensure that the submarine's actions conformed to the directives of the Communist Party, making him a crucial figure in any decision that could potentially escalate the situation to a nuclear conflict. Vasili Arkhipov, the flotilla commander and the submarine's second-in-command, played a pivotal role during the Cuban Missile Crisis. His presence aboard the submarine was part of Soviet naval practice, which required a senior officer to oversee the captain's decisions. As tensions mounted and discussions turned to the possibility of launching a nuclear torpedo, Arkhipov faced immense pressure from Captain Savitsky and political officer Maslenikov. Despite their insistence, Arkhipov stood firm in his decision to surface the submarine and await further orders, rather than escalating to a nuclear strike. The situation on board the B-59 was dire. The crew, comprising around 70 to 80 sailors and officials, endured severe conditions after days submerged in the submarine's cramped, stifling, and poorly ventilated environment. The air quality deteriorated with low oxygen levels and rising carbon dioxide, exacerbating the oppressive heat. This physical discomfort compounded the emotional strain on the crew, who were already grappling with the anxiety of potentially being involved in a nuclear conflict and feeling isolated in their underwater confinement. Where was all these happening? Before diving deeper into the events that nearly led to World War III, it's important to understand the backdrop where these tensions unfolded. The Barents Sea, a marginal sea of the Arctic Ocean, played a crucial role in this high-stakes drama. Situated off the northern coasts of Norway and Russia, the Barents Sea is bordered by the Svalbard archipelago to the northwest, the Novaya Zemlya Islands to the east, and the mainland of Norway and Russia to the south. This sea is characterized by its harsh Arctic climate, often blanketed in ice during the winter months. However, the warm currents from the North Atlantic Drift keep its southern part relatively ice-free year-round. Despite the cold, the Barents Sea supports a diverse range of marine life. It is home to various fish species such as cod, haddock, and capelin, as well as whales and seals. The strategic importance of the Barents Sea cannot be overstated. It is a vital area for the Russian Northern Fleet and is rich in natural resources, including significant oil and gas reserves. For Russia and Norway, the Barents Sea is crucial for energy development, shipping, and fishing, making it a region of considerable economic and strategic value. Vasili Arkhipov's key decision amidst differing opinions. The divergent opinions among the three senior officers on the Soviet submarine B-59 regarding the potential launch of a nuclear torpedo during the Cuban Missile Crisis were shaped by their distinct roles and perspectives on the unfolding crisis. Captain Valentin Savitsky, the submarine's commanding officer, was under immense stress and believed that his vessel was under attack. His experience and military training led him to conclude that war might have already begun due to the U.S. Navy's depth charges. Savitsky felt compelled to take decisive action to protect his crew and the Soviet Union, interpreting the circumstances as an existential threat that required a strong response. Ivan Maslenikov, the submarine's political officer, had a crucial role in ensuring that political directives were followed and supporting military decisions. In the tense environment aboard the B59, Maslenikov was aligned with Savitsky's assessment that a robust response was warranted. His responsibilities included backing the captain's decisions, especially when the perceived threat was severe and immediate action appeared necessary. Vasili Arkhipov, the flotilla commander and second-in-command aboard the Soviet submarine B59, played a pivotal role in averting a potential nuclear disaster during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Despite being under tremendous pressure, Arkhipov's cautious and rational approach proved crucial. As the chief of staff of the flotilla, Arkhipov's experience and reputation were significant factors in the decision-making process. His previous courageous conduct during the K-19 incident had earned him respect and authority, which influenced his peers' trust in his judgment. When Captain Savitsky and political officer Maslenikov considered launching the nuclear torpedo, Arkhipov advocated for restraint. He argued that they should surface and wait for further instructions from Moscow rather than assuming that war had begun and retaliating with a nuclear strike. Arkhipov's decision to persuade Savitsky to surface proved to be a critical intervention. The B-59, suffering from severely low battery power, a failed air conditioning system, and extreme heat, was in a dire situation. The high carbon dioxide levels and oppressive conditions made the crew's decision-making even more challenging. When the submarine surfaced and made contact with a U.S. destroyer, it was able to communicate its status and receive orders. The Soviet fleet subsequently instructed the B-59 to return to the Soviet Union, effectively diffusing the immediate crisis. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, Vasili Arkhipov remained calm and rational despite the stress on board the B-59. He was skeptical that a full-scale conflict had begun and argued to surface the submarine for confirmation rather than act on potentially misleading depth charges, which were likely warning shots. Arkhipov understood that launching a nuclear torpedo without clear instructions could lead to catastrophic escalation. His experience and judgment were crucial in advocating for caution, ultimately preventing a potential nuclear disaster and highlighting the importance of careful decision-making under pressure. Resolution of conflict. Following Vasili Arkhipov's decisive intervention, the Soviet submarine B-59 surfaced, averting an immediate nuclear threat. This allowed the crew to re-establish communication with Soviet command, crucial for defusing the crisis. The submarine's resurfacing provided a critical pause, enabling more effective diplomacy. Meanwhile, President John F. Kennedy and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev continued their intense negotiations, guiding the resolution of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The negotiations led to a significant agreement that addressed the core issues of the crisis. The Soviet Union agreed to dismantle and remove its nuclear missiles from Cuba, effectively resolving the immediate conflict that had ignited the confrontation. In a secret agreement, the United States also agreed to withdraw its Jupiter missiles from Turkey, which had been stationed close to the Soviet Union's borders. This concession was aimed at alleviating some of the Soviet Union's security concerns and played a key role in reaching a peaceful resolution. The Cuban Missile Crisis stands as a pivotal moment in Cold War history, vividly illustrating the grave risks inherent in nuclear brinkmanship and underscoring the immense value of diplomacy. The crisis, which brought the United States and the Soviet Union perilously close to nuclear war, revealed the urgent need for improved communication between the two superpowers to prevent such dangerous situations in the future. In response, the establishment of the hotline emerged as a crucial development. This direct communication link between Washington and Moscow was designed to minimize the likelihood of accidental hostilities and facilitate swift, clear dialogue during times of tension. Vasili Arkhipov's role during the Cuban Missile Crisis underscored the vital importance of human judgment in high-stress situations. His courageous decision to oppose the launch of the nuclear torpedo, despite immense pressure, was crucial in preventing a catastrophic escalation. Arkhipov's actions are now recognized as averting one of history's most disastrous events. The resolution of the crisis not only prevented immediate nuclear disaster, but also paved the way for future arms control agreements, contributing to a gradual reduction in Cold War tensions. This period highlighted the need for effective communication and careful diplomacy in managing international conflicts and ensuring global security. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.